Hello, good evening, and welcome to Varsity Maine Live for the Portland Press Herald. I am Travis Lazarzik, and tonight for our basketball championships preview, we have an all-tournament team of writers from around the state here. We'll start with Michael Hoffer from the Forecaster, Lee Horton from the Lewiston Sun-Journal, and from the Kennebec Journal Morning Sentinel, Dave Dyer. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First thing we got to talk about, of course. First thing we have to talk about is the changes that have just come in over the last couple hours for the state championship games, times, and dates. As we all know, there's a big storm that's going to hit Maine on Saturday. It looks like it's going to, be worse as the farther you go south. So what we have here is the Class B state games, girls and boys, will now no longer be in Portland. They will be at the Augusta Civic Center in the evening on Saturday. We have the girls Ellsworth versus Spruce Mountain at 7. The boys Orono versus Oceanside at 8:45. The Class D state championship games that were going to be in Bangor at the Cross Insurance Center at Saturday afternoon are now going to be on Monday evening. The girls at 6:05, Seacoast Christian versus Southern Aroostook. Boys 7:45, Forest Hills versus Southern Aroostook. Stay tuned. Please check out varsitymaine.com throughout the day tomorrow and follow us on social media because the MPA said the games that they're going to still try to play on Saturday night in Bangor and Portland might be changed. We could see some more time changes here. So, Michael Hoffer, I'll start with you. Do you feel like they should have just changed all these games at once, or is it a good move to kind of play it by ear with these evening shows?
Well, I think that, you always want to have the most updated weather information you have because it's not an exact science. And sometimes these big snowstorms don't turn into the big snowstorms we expect. But I mean, everything we're hearing is it's not going to be conducive to, even a South Portland game, getting people to the Cross Insurance arena and being able to clean out. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, that they haven't gone ahead and pulled the plug and moved everything to Monday. I think we're going to wake up tomorrow and that's the announcement we're going to get. But I'm a little surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Lee, what are you hearing from like the Oxford Hills girls? That's a school in your coverage area. They've got kids coming from a lot of spread out towns going to that school. Are they concerned about traveling to Portland on Saturday night?
It seems like the big concern with them and Deergo boys who I've talked to today is just knowing what's going to happen, because obviously there's lots of planning that's involved in it. And I think that's a big thing. I think they're going to travel there regardless of when it is. They just want to know what to expect. And it's kind of, the MPA is in a really tough position because it's easy for us to say like, oh, just move it to a different day. Just tell us now. But there's a lot of planning that needs to go into that. They have to, they've already done it. They've talked to the other people, the other venues and, other times and everything, but it's kind of hard to just move your state tournament. It's not like moving another, like a Lewis and Oxford Hills basketball game in the middle of the season or something like that, which is probably hard in itself too, but there's lots of travel and there's all the people who work at the venues that they have to like make sure that's all set up. It's not an easy decision to make. No,
and it's a great point about the venues because they have other events coming up. The Cross Center in Bangor has bull riding coming in next weekend, and I'm sure that's not a one day setup. They've got a lot to prepare for to get that ready. The Cross Arena in Portland hosts the Maine Mariners. That's their number one tenant, so they've got to work around that schedule. I'm not sure if the Augusta Civic Center has anything coming up or not. Dave, you guys in Central Maine cover the Forest Hills boys who have a long trip no matter what, going from Jackman to Bangor, and they're not really happy about having to move a game to Monday night on a school night, are they?
No, not at all. Just from what we've heard, we've had some chats. It's not great. It's not great right now for that traveling crew in Jackman. Originally, the Saturday game was going to be at 2:45, which is very doable for that crew. Now having that be later in the evening on Monday, a school night. They have to make that trip from Bangor, and getting anywhere from Jackman is a bit of a journey and a bit of a time clamp. And then you have the game itself, 2 hours long. You of course have the championship ceremony, which all of us are aware takes a good few minutes, especially if you're on deadline. after a game, and apologize for the dogs. And
dogs don't care about deadline.
Yeah. Dogs don't care about deadlines, and then obviously the travel back. So you're talking very possibly returning back to Jackman at midnight, 1 a.m. On what would then be a Tuesday morning. So it's tough, but they'll do it. They're a devoted crowd over there, but it's obviously just not not the greatest step in the world for them.
Yeah, it's not an easy decision for the MPA, and I know they've been working on it all day, but at the same time, they're always harping on safety. We see it with the equipment they use. We see it with all kinds of stuff, and I just think with this much snow being forecast for so much of the state on Saturday, maybe the best thing safety-wise to do would try to get this schedule going for Monday and maybe even Tuesday as soon as possible, sooner rather than later. I know some people will say, well, we used to always go if the turnpike was open, but we've did a lot of stupid things in the past. We didn't consider head injuries that, severe. We called it getting your bell rung. We didn't give water breaks. We learned from idiocy like that. You'd think we'd learn from, knowing to stay off the roads when they need to be taken care of. So we'll see. Stay tuned tomorrow. Check varsitymaine.com and pressherald.com and centralmaine.com, forecaster, sunjournal.com for all the updates on any more changes in the schedule. Let's move on now to look back at one of the plays that happened last weekend that we're going to be talking about for a long, long time, I think, in Maine. That's Will Davies' buzzer beater to beat Bonnie Eagle in the Class A South regional semifinals. Lee, you were there sitting right next to me. My recollection of it was a bang bang play live, and I in the moment you can't fault the officials for counting it. Of course, then when you look back and you parse the video to the 1 millisecond and can see that the ball was it looks like it was in Will Davies' hand as the backboard lit up to signify the end of play. What do you remember about that moment, Lee? Did you think it was good? Did you not know? I can't remember if we talked about it or not.
Yeah, I don't know if you're like purposely being nice to me or not, but you asked me after if it was good, and I'm like, oh, yeah, he definitely got it off in time. And then you went and did your interviews, and you came back, and I had watched the video that I took, and I was like, I was wrong. He did not get it off in time. And I had basically the same angle as the referee did, and so. I mean, it was a lot closer than it looks in slow motion.
Yeah,
for sure. And
it was bang bang. I was looking at Davies shoot it, and then when I look over at the basket to follow the shot, of course the light's off because we knew it was that close, and it goes in, and mayhem ensues. Michael Hoffer, what have you been hearing from people? You're in the Portland area. You see the people who are around these schools. What are you hearing?
I heard immediately, first of all, it was this incredible back and forth ending with this dramatic buzzer beater, but almost as soon as the shot went in, I was hearing from people that they thought it had come after the horn or after the light had gone on, and that it probably shouldn't have counted. And Travis, I thought you did a great job with your article, just kind of presenting it as, the refs said it was good, and everyone's going to have their opinion about it. People are going to be talking about this for years and years, which they are. But ultimately, TA advances and moves on. One thing I think it lost in the shuffle is it was one heck of a play. I mean, they threw the pass to Davies. He caught it. He dribbles. He shoots. Whether it should have counted or not, we can talk about that till the cows come home. But I thought it was really a brilliant executed play. And that's going to get lost in the shuffle. And I think that game took a little bit out of TA. I mean, the game itself did because it came down to the wire, while South Portland Scarborough was a relatively easy win for the Red Riots. And I think you saw 24 hours later, South Portland just seemed fresher and sharper, and they were able to beat TA with relative ease. And I wonder if there was a little bit of a quote unquote hangover with Thornton Academy with all the criticism they were hearing that maybe they didn't belong there. There were people in the crowd Saturday night, Bonnie Eagle people yelling, that their team should have been the one playing South Portland, not TA. So all these things I think come into play and might have been factors. And it's multi-layered. It's going to be one of those things that people are going to be talking about next year and 5 years from now and 10 years from now and 20 years from now. And it's very unfortunate for Bonnie Eagle, because I think another thing that gets lost is what a great effort that they had to almost knock TA off for the second time this year. But ultimately, it wasn't meant to be. And, I guess this will just be something that goes on and on into history.
Yeah, and of course, this sparks the debate about should we have replay in high school. I say no.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, we don't need to make this more pro or college or anything any more than it is. It's high school basketball. With the apologies to Bonnie Eagle, it's sometimes you're going to be on the tough end of a call like that. It's life. Dave Dyer, what do you think? Should we be looking at replay seriously? Because remember, this happened 3 years ago. This is not new. Remember Dexter Central, Central Roostic for Class C North. And that was for the regional title, and people were talking about that forever. And then, what do you think, Dave? Are we going too far when we talk replay?
I would be okay. So where the tournament games are currently located is well situated to have replay set up. If we're talking theoretically here, if they wanted to do it, I would be okay with replay for buzzer beater situations only within the confines of the tournament, if that makes sense. What I don't want to see, and there's a lot of keyboard warriors when it comes to this topic who are just, they just think they have all the answers for how this is going to go down. That it would cure everything, that and a shot clock will just cure all of Maine high school basketball. But, if we do this, if this happens, does it open Pandora's box for, okay, well, now I want to see replay for certain fouls. I want to see replay for the grasping of the rim on a dunk, all that jazz. I mean, if it's just strictly for buzzer beaters, I'd be willing to listen to the argument. I think that's possible. Technology is available now to make that happen. I think the NPA is littered with way more problems than replay right now. We're still talking classification and where we got to find, how we're going to situate teams in the classes right now. I really think for the basketball committee and for the rest of the NPA, I think in the grand scheme of things, I think this is kind of on the lower scale. Is it worth having a conversation about? Absolutely. But is it something that's in dire need, no pun intended, to have this happen in the future? I don't see it as the biggest overall thing.
Lee, how about you? Replay, yay or nay?
Yeah, I mean, it's only the biggest thing, like every 3 years when it happens or whatever.
Right.
So maybe not worth the effort for that. But I mean, if they want to do it for the tournament and they can do it easily and cheaply, then I guess go ahead. I mean, it's not like whose cameras are they going to trust? Like, who are they going to go to? Because they can't go to every person in the, like, I was there on the sideline filming it. They're not going to come to me. And so probably the NFHS feed or whatever, but they got to work it out with them and have that set up. So I'd be fine with it during just at the end of the game, buzzer beater. Because I mean, the refs have a tough job, and it's not like they're they're not doing this full time. This is like, they travel to the game together in a carpool and just like everybody else does, and make a few bucks. They're not pros, so I mean, they could probably use the help if they wanted to do it. That's fine. I mean, I got kind of tired of like the arguments about these types of things and how it seems a lot more simple than it really is. Yeah. But if they want to do it, go ahead.
Yeah, how it's March. It's March Madness time. How many times do we watch college basketball games that are close late, and every time the ball goes out of bounds, there's a stoppage because they have to look at replay to see if it went off someone's pinky, tip. You'd hate to see it come to that. I think I agree. Kind of consensus here. If it's a tournament game, a buzzer beater, win or loss, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Hockey, high school hockey has had replay for a few years. I know up at the Coliseum, they had the ability to look at goals, whether they were good or not. And, that's a positive thing. But I mean, where do you draw the line? And yeah, it's not as simple as, we have replay and we have a shot clock and everything's going to be hunky dory going forward. It's not realistic. So I think I agree with, I would say I would have no problem if we have a legitimate feed, we'll go to that for tournament games, buzzer beaters, and that's it. But I don't think you want to expand it much more than that because it just takes on such a life of its own.
Right. Okay. Well, that's going to be something people are going to be talking about for a while until the next time it happens again, and we'll move on to that. Yeah. So, We have athletes of the week. We're going to focus on athletes from sports other than basketball for the most part, who have just recently completed their seasons and things like swimming and wrestling and skiing and track and field. We'll start with the Camden Hills girls swimming team. For the second year in a row, the Windjammers captured the Class A swimming and diving state championship without the benefit of a single individual victory. Their 285 points easily outdistanced runner-up Gorham, who had 222. Maddie Ripley, Oceanside Wrestling. The junior made history at the Class B state finals by becoming the first girl in Maine to win an individual state title while wrestling against boys. Ripley pinned Nick Allen of Wells in the 106-pound final. 3 days later, she was named the most outstanding performer at the girls' individual state championship at Wells High. Dave, you were at Mananock for the Class B state finals. Just kind of take us through what that moment was like for Maddie and what the atmosphere was like.
I can tell you first and foremost that Maddie didn't fit, just in talking with her after the match, she didn't think that she would be pinning Allen, within the first 2 minutes of the first period. They had taken each other on regionals the week prior to that, and she beat him 4-1, in a thorough match. This one, she said, so long as I could get the first takedown, which she ended up doing, that she would feel pretty confident to make it happen, and got him in a chicken wing. Moved him right over to a half Nelson and got the pin. She was emotional right from the end of the match. Jumped right into the arms of Jason Yates, her stepfather, and head coach over there at Oceanside. It was a dream realized for her, and and just being a state champion. Not so much the first female state champion, but to win a state championship. It was a packed house at Mananock. They stopped everything for a moment, and the judges table read a nice little proclamation about Maddie's achievement. It was a huge moment. If you were there, you kind of you knew what had happened. I'm not sure Maddie is necessarily, maybe in the days since it's been able to kind of like wrap her head around the fact that she's now a trailblazer in this state for the sport and within this state. And the crazy thing is she's still a junior. She has one more year to go. She already has her goal set for next year. She didn't win a KVAC championship this year, so next year she wants to win a KVAC title as well as repeat as state champion. So, sky's the limit for her. And now with the notoriety of being having a first within the state, it was a huge moment. It was great to see, just happy to be there to be able to see it.
All right, Dave, thank you. Henry McCourt from Mount Blue Nordic Skiing. He's a sophomore, and he swept the classical, freestyle, and pursuit Class A state titles at the Fort Kent Outdoor Center. His combined time of 30 minutes, 36.3 seconds in the 5K Classic and 5K Freestyle was faster than any skier, regardless of class. Kerry Drake, York Track and Field. He's a junior, captured victories in the 3 wins in the distance event. It's a mile, the 800 meters, and the 2 mile. York won the girls' title. Logan Schwartz, Cape Elizabeth Alpine Skiing. Schwartz swept the slalom and giant slalom state titles in Class B. He was also the top qualifier for Maine's Eastern High School Championship squad, which will compete March 2nd through 5th at Cannon Mountain in New Hampshire. Miles Burr, Mount Desert Island Track and Field. He's a junior sprinter. He broke 2 state records in the Class B indoor meet. He broke the record in the 55 meters with a time of 6.47 seconds in the prelims, then won the final in 6.51. Then he smashed the 200-meter record by clocking 22.34 seconds, well under the mark of 22.6 seconds set by Nate Martin of Greeley in 2009. Lucy Johnson scored a hat trick for the Chevers Co-op girls hockey team in his 3-2 win over Yarmouth Freeport in the state championship. Johnson also scored 4 goals in Chevers' regional final win over the Gorham Co-op team. Logan Ouellette from Levitt Boys Nordic Skiing. He won state championships in the Class B classical and freestyle races. Lee, what can you tell us about Logan and the Levitt Nordic team?
He's a hard worker. He's one of the many cross country running Nordic skiers, and he's had some success in cross country running. He won the KVAC title last year, I believe, and then come winter he dominates the KVAC and in Nordic skiing. So yeah, there's seems like an up and coming. I know Mount Blue is kind of like the Class A's powerhouse, but Levitt seems to be coming up and doing some things in Class B lately. I mean, they had Roy Varney a couple years ago, but like ever since then, it seems like they still are pretty good.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Taylor Gordon from Mount Blue Alpine Skiing was a Class A giant slalom and was runner-up slalom in Saddleback Mountain. She also was the top qualifier in the Maine shootout, earning a berth in the Eastern High School Championships at Cannon Mountain. Ethan Schultz, Scarborough boys swimming, he won the 100 and 200-yard freestyles, anchored 2 winning relays to lead Scarborough to a second straight Class A swimming and diving state championship. Michael, what can you tell us about this now dominant program of the Scarborough boys swimming team?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that 12 months ago, Scarborough had never won a boys state title in swimming. And now here they've gone back to back. And I mean, I think they had 369.5 points in that state meet. Just completely ran away with it. And Schultz is a huge reason why, winning his events and being dominant in the relay. But, Scarborough has suddenly come along. This was Chevress's event for years and years. They had won 8 years in a row prior to COVID. And now suddenly Scarborough has taken over, and there's no end in sight with this program. So many great athletes at that school, and in every sport, they're winning state championships in boys indoor track as well. So it just goes to show there's a lot of great athletes to go around. Very good boys hockey team. Boys basketball got to the semifinals. So no shortage of great athletes, male or female, at Scarborough. And right now the swim team is just on fire.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Where are we? Hunter Halley, Messalonski boys hockey. The goalie made 21 saves in the Eagles' 3-0 win over Gardner Waterville Winslow in the Class B North quarterfinals on Wednesday. Annabelle Brooks, Chevress Nordic Skiing. The senior swept the classical, freestyle, and pursuit titles in the Class A state meet. Her aggregate classical and freestyle time was the fastest of any girl in any class at the Fort Kent Outdoor Center. Falmouth's Mitch Ham scored 2 goals and an assist in Falmouth's 7-1 win over St. Dom's. The victory was the Navigators' 16th in a row, and Falmouth will go into the Class A boys hockey tournament as the top seed. Audrey Cohen from Greeley Girls Swimming, she's a junior, and she won the 100 breaststroke and 100 butterfly and was named performer of the meet at the Class B state meet for the second straight year. Mart Charpentier from York Track and Field, he broke his own state record in the shot put with a throw of 57 feet, 1.5 inches at the Class B Indoor Championship. It was more than a foot longer than his winning throw last year, which broke a 43-year-old record. And last but not least, Gardner's Lizzie Gruber, a Maine Miss Basketball finalist, finished her high school basketball career with 26 points, 17 rebounds, and 3 blocked shots in a loss to Lawrence in the Class A North Championship game. She will play next season for St. Joseph's College in Philadelphia. That's our athletes of the week. We have 10 state championship basketball games to go over, guys. We'll do that quickly, and we'll start with the games that are going to happen Friday night at the Augusta Civic Center in Class A. First, we have the girls' game at 6 p.m. Lawrence, 18-3 versus Brunswick, who's 19-2. Dave Dyer, you have seen this Lawrence team a few times this season, and you just saw Brunswick at the Augusta Civic Center practicing the other day. So kind of break down this game for us.
It's going to be one of the KVACA's top offenses in Lawrence against the top defense in KVACA in Brunswick. The Bulldogs, they have it's not necessarily just one score, it's multiple scorers. Brianna Poulin has averaged 10.8 points per game for the Bulldogs this year. Hope Bouchard has averaged 10.7. They are dangerous from 3. Multiple people can score. They've averaged 62.5 points per game this year. Like I said, first in KVACA. Brunswick really, really prides itself on its defense. They've allowed 32.6 points per game. Like I said, tops in KVACA. They've had a couple of key pieces this year come onto the team. Dakota Shipley and Maddie Warner, who previously played for Morse. They transferred this year. Shipley's been the team's leading scorer, 13.2 points per game. Warner's been huge on the boards, 9.5 rebounds per game for them, 4.3 blocks per game, if I'm not mistaken, too, which was second in the conference, only behind Lizzie Gruber, which is pretty impressive. And also Kelsey Carlton, who has averaged 10.4 points per game, has been great with assists for Brunswick as well. This is a really good matchup, guys. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. Honestly, for me, it's a coin toss who might win this one, but it certainly should be an excellent state title showdown. And also a fun little throw in too. Brunswick is apparently bringing 3 school buses full of band members, and Lawrence has its own interesting band as well. So it should be quite the band battle, as well as there'll be quite the battle off the court as well as on the court on Friday night.
Good to know, Dave. Thank you. In the boys' Class A game, we have Brewer, who's 20-1 and just kind of rolling right now, versus Falmouth, who was 17-4. Michael,
Yep.
Falmouth's playing well despite losing their best player to an injury for the tournament. How do the Navigators match up against this really strong Brewer team?
Well, it's funny. Most teams, you lose a star player, and you tend not to, if you don't buckle, you're not as good as you were. But this Falmouth team in the regional tournament, they were sensational, especially defensively. They rode their defense. I think they held their three opponents to roughly 30 points a game, and they really weren't seriously pushed. But Judd Armstrong's been really their star player all year. Lucas Dilworth, he hit that beyond half-court shot to kind of spark him to the regional final win over Marshwood the other day. And then Paul Dilworth, who hasn't been a scorer, he's really stepped up as well. So, I will never count out a Dave Halligan coach team, just like I never will count out a Joe Russo coach team, which we'll get to in a minute. Falmouth found a way within the region to really stymie these other teams that were high flying. I think Brewer is another story. And, here you got the Witches looking for their first ever championship. They've been dominant all year. They had a 1-point loss to Skowhegan as their only blemish, and they avenged that with a 37-point victory in the regional final. They're riding high. It reminds me in a lot of ways of last year's state game where Falmouth took on Nokomis. Nokomis got all the attention with Cooper Flagg, and deservingly so. And Falmouth knew going in they weren't going to win a shootout, and they actually did a good job slowing the game down. They lost 43-27. They just couldn't score enough to win that game. I think this year's team might be a little bit better equipped to maybe slow Brewer down and get enough offense at the same time. If the Dilworths can score, Judd Armstrong will get his. If this game is remotely close in the second half, look out, because like I said, with Coach Halligan pushing the buttons, I know they're going to go in with a specific game plan. And if they can just hang around, I think they can make things very interesting at the end. But Brewer, for good reason, is the favorite. They're probably the best team in the state, regardless of class. And they've got to feel really good about their chances of winning a first championship.
All right. Thanks, Michael. For now, we have 6 games scheduled for Saturday night. We'll start with Class AA. That's going to be at the Cross Arena in Portland. The girls' game, Oxford Hills, they're 20-1 versus Gorham, who's 12-9. Gorham's typically one of those teams that's here a lot, but might be an upstart this year. Lee, what can you tell us about this really good Oxford Hills team?
Well, they're pretty loaded. Just look at the last game when they lost Ella Pelletier to foul trouble for most of the second half, but then she fouled out in overtime. And they just they still found a way to win. They still had, obviously Sierra Carson, their top player, was just amazing in the fourth quarter and overtime. And then Tristan Derenberger stepped up and hit 3-pointers. Finally, she was kind of struggling the first part of the game. And they just had so many different guys. I mean, they lost all their size, but they still managed to go against those taller Chevrolet players in the regional final. It was just pretty amazing. So I think they're experienced and they're used to being here, and just a hard team to beat. But then Gorham is the same type of team. They don't have a great record, but they're used to being in the state finals. I think they've been to 5 Class AA state finals, and Oxford Hills has been to 4. So just these are the programs that come playoff time. They're the ones you kind of count on to make a run.
All right, thanks, Lee. Boys game, we have one of the classic rivalries in the state with Portland, who's 16-5, versus South Portland, who's 18-3. They played a really close game to end the regular season, Michael. So tell us what separates these teams. Not a heck of a lot.
No, and if you look at the first meeting, it was 1 point, and it was basically a Jalen Jackson putback at the end. This is going to be the 31st all-time tournament meeting between Portland and South Portland, and it's going to be the 100th anniversary of the first one, which dates to 1923. These teams have played each other a lot in the regular season and in the tournament. They played a couple state games, 2016, 2017, that Portland was able to win. I don't think many people had either Portland or South Portland in their bracket, guys. I mean, I know that both these teams were the number 2 seeds, but, let's face it, all season long we were talking about Oxford Hills, Thornton Academy. South Portland lost twice to Thornton Academy. The second time wasn't even close. Portland had a couple of close calls against Oxford Hills, but I don't think a lot of people believed in the Bulldogs going into this tournament. But both of those teams have peaked. They're both very well coached. They're both very proud programs. They met in the football regional final back in November. So Jalen Jackson, who quarterbacked South Portland in that game, which they lost, He's probably going to be the best player on the floor either tomorrow night or Monday. He had a terrific regional tournament. He scored several key baskets late this year. I think if the game is close late, look for him to maybe take control. And then Portland's got several football players too who got to the state game and then lost. Kennedy Charles, Sam Esposito, Remy Jawani and company. They want to win the basketball state title in part for their football brethren. So I think this is going to be a terrific matchup. I think, South Portland probably has the best player in Jackson, and South Portland maybe on balance might be the best team. But I got to tell you, when you have Joe Russo pushing those buttons for Portland, I just can't pick against these Bulldogs. This is not a vintage Portland team, but every night it's somebody different, be it Remy Jawani, be it Jesse Kamas, be it Kevin Rugabiro off the bench. They just have so many different guys that can do so many different things. I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. I don't think you're going to see much separation really from start to finish, and it's just hard to bet against Coach Russo's team in a tight game late. But, South Portland would love to go back-to-back. They finally ended that 30-year drought. They'd love to go back-to-back for the first time since the famed Bob Brown, Brett Brown teams of 1979 and 80, and they're going to have their hands full doing it. But it's certainly going to be a compelling matchup, and for fans in the greater Portland area, there's certainly a lot to be interested in, and I expect whether that game is Saturday night or Monday, I think you're going to see a really good crowd and a really fun environment.
All right, thanks, Michael. Class B, which for now is at the Augusta Civic Center on Saturday night. The girls' game is Ellsworth 18-3 versus Spruce Mountain, who is 20-1. Lee, both these teams kind of had to upset a favored number 1 seed to get here. What can you tell us about Spruce Mountain? They knocked off a really good Oceanside team that was defending state champs.
Yeah, and Oceanside was so good in the regional tournament, and so was Spruce. But I kind of thought that Spruce wouldn't be able to compete with Oceanside's size. And they did. I think Spruce just has like 7 really, really good basketball players. They know how to play. They can dribble, they can shoot, they can drive. They're all very well-rounded, very smart players, and they're physical. It's just kind of amazing. This junior class they have has kind of been coming up through the years. I think when Zach Keene, their coach, was hired to coach Spruce Mountain, these girls were in 3rd or 4th grade, and he was working at their school. So he's kind of known them. He's kind of been waiting for them to come along. But, I mean, first time a Spruce Mountain team has been this far. It's just kind of amazing that they've done this. And they're a team you don't really want to bet against because they're so tough to beat, as Oceanside found out.
Right. All right. Thanks, Lee. The boys' game will be Orono 18-3 versus Oceanside, who's 20-1. This Orono boys team beat a really good undefeated Ellsworth team to advance. Oceanside, Michael, beat Yarmouth, who was defending state champs in the regional final. Did you cover that game?
I did, and it was extremely memorable, and it looked like Stevie Walsh was about to lead another dramatic Yarmouth comeback, and in fact, they did come back and enforce overtime. Yarmouth even led in the OT, but Oceanside just wouldn't be denied. Carter Galley, he was absolutely unconscious early in that game. He just was hitting shots from everywhere. And then Cohen Galley made some big free throws, some big plays down the stretch. And, kudos to Oceanside. I mean, they could have buckled in that game, but they found a way to win it in overtime. And here they are now with a chance to win the championship, not against Ellsworth, who I thought would get back after coming so close last year.
Right.
And they have that long championship drought too, but it wasn't to be. Really interesting to see how Oceanside, can they take that final step, because there were times in the regional tournament they looked very vulnerable. Number 8 Cape Elizabeth had them on the ropes in the quarters, and then Yarmouth very much had them on the ropes in the regional final, but both times that team rose to the challenge. I think they'll be battle tested and ready for the big stage in that state game, and they're a lot of fun to watch, and we haven't heard the last of that team at all.
Okay, thank you. The Class C games, which are going to be at the Cross Center in Bangor. The girls' game, Old Orchard Beach, 18-3. Dexter is 20-1. Old Orchard Beach making their first state game appearance. I saw them against North Yarmouth Academy in the regional final last week. It all starts and ends with Elise McNair, their Miss Maine basketball semifinalist. She scored 26 of their 39 points. She also had, I think, 12 or 13 rebounds. She's just a complete player. Old Orchard Beach has kind of been beating teams with a strong defense all year and letting McNair do her thing offensively. So we'll see how they do with Dexter up in Bangor. The boys' game will be Callis, who is 18-3, versus Dirigo, who is 20-1. Lee, you've seen this Dirigo team. What can you tell us about them?
They are very, very good. They're a very skilled team. They've done a really good job of last year. They were the underdogs and they won the state championship, and they've defended it pretty well this year. They haven't really wilted under the pressure of being the favorite. And they're a very they'll attack on offense and they like to run the ball. And I think Callis is the same type of way, a really high scoring game. So this could be the highest scoring game of all the tournament championships, all the state championships. But Charlie Houghton, he's their top player, really good scorer, 6'4". He kind of adds a jump. His jumper gets better every single year. He's the one that hit the 3-pointer to win the state championship game last year. He's been kind of even passing the ball a lot more this year. He's one of 8 seniors, and they're all kind of contributing to the win, especially him and Dakota Tompkins. So very, very good team. And they've had a lot of close games. They've had to come back a lot in the fourth quarter this year. They never give up. They just keep coming. I think, their coach kind of says he wishes they didn't fall behind so much, but he knows that when they are trailing in the fourth quarter, that they believe they can come back. I think Mount Abrams had them down 4 times in the fourth quarter this year, and each time Dirigo comes back. So they're a tough team to beat. You have to play 4 quarters to beat them.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Finally, on Monday, we have the Class D state championships up in Bangor. The girls' side, Seacoast Christian, they are 12-9 versus Southern Aroostook, 18-3. This is a rematch of last year's state game. Seacoast Christian, with just 6 players, just keeps finding a way to win in the tournament. Their record is 12-9, which makes you wonder, how good they can be. But they play a really tough schedule with a lot of good Class C teams on it. Then they get to Class D and they take care of business. Last year, though, Southern Aroostook was just a juggernaut and had scored the first 43 points of the game. I don't know if Southern Aroostook's as good as they were, but I think once again, Seacoast Christian's going to have their work cut out for them. Class D boys game is also a rematch of last year's state game, and it's Forest Hills 18-3 versus Southern Aroostook 21-0. Dave, you've seen this Forest Hills team. This is, I think, their 5th state game in 5 years or 6 years. How do the Tigers from Jackman look?
All right, so since 2012, this is now Forest Hill's 7th appearance in a Class D final, and they have 4 title wins coming into this. And this is just, and remember too, obviously we lost a year of COVID, so really 7 out of 10 years, essentially. So this is just what they do. They're used to this, and it's. I'll have a story about this this upcoming weekend. This has just become a multi-generational thing, that brothers being passed on to brothers, just a winning tradition that's just kind of crazy in this small town and the school of 43 kids. It's one of the interest. It ends up just being one of the very, very interesting stories of basketball in the state. But this particular team, they're 18-3. Their 3 losses were all to Class C competition, to Madison, to Carabec, to Richmond. Outside of that, they've blown the Class D South competition away. Mason Desjardins has been their top scorer, has been all season. Has a really, he's a shooter. And when his shot's going, he goes on a hot streak. So he's been averaging well over 20 points, even close to 30 for them all season. But they have multiple players involved. Braden Welch has been a guy who's been big for them. Cooper Daigle, veteran player, crashes the boards. Blaine Netto's a guy who's been developing a solid 3-pointer this year. Even a youngster, Max Cuddy, who is an 8th grader, who they've been letting take some threes, and has one of the more interesting shots I've seen in this tournament. So they have shooters galore from everywhere, and they can score. They can put up points all day long. However, Southern Aroostook is 21-0, and they're the powerhouse of Class D. They're the defending state champion, and they beat Forest Hills 82-61 last year. So if there's one team that does have Forest Hills number, it's Southern Aroostook, and they've been great all year. Dylan Burpee's been one of their star players. It should be a great matchup. Obviously, Forest Hills has a fire lit under them from last year's loss. Certainly a lot of seniors with a lot of championship experience looking to end their careers on a high note.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Reminder to check out varsitymaine.com for the absolute best high school sports coverage in the state of Maine. And check it out tomorrow, too, to get updates on tournament games, whether they're played on Saturday or not. Thanks for sticking with us on this long tournament championship preview. For Michael, for Lee, for Dave, I'm Travis. Thanks for joining us on Varsity Maine Live.